Welcome to Minnesota Sports Talk. I'm Josh Coan.
I'm Carter Burquest.
Today we're talking about the Minnesota Timberwolves. We made the playoffs, but is there issues in the locker room? Does Jimmy not like Wiggins or Cat not like Thibodeau? A lot going on right now, so let's talk about. There's a decent chance, or at least there's some rumors going around, that there's no way that Jimmy Butler re-signs with the Wolves next offseason. So that begs the question, is it time to trade Jimmy Butler now while you can get something for him so you don't lose him next offseason for nothing?
Yeah, this is probably not the answer you're gonna hoping for here, but what we need to do is trade the coach, Tom Thibodeau, or cut him, because that is the problem. We all know it's the problem, and if he comes back, Jimmy will be gone. Not trying to be negative, he's not staying here. He does not like Wiggins, he does not like Cat. He is not sticking around. So yes, the answer is you do need to trade Jimmy Butler because you got to get something for him. You gave up the farm, you gave up one of your great young pieces, and some guys that are really thriving in Chicago for him. You got to trade him and get something at least. And I guess hit the reset button one more time as Thibodeau drove us into the ground. But enough on that. I think if you're competing, you don't trade him. There's maybe a slight chance we do compete and play pretty well where you're not going to trade him, but I think in the grand scheme of things, I don't think they're going to compete. I don't think they're really going to have any sort of shot to do anything. And so I think you do need to trade Jimmy Butler, unfortunately.
Yeah, we haven't had him that long, and if he leaves in free agency next offseason and we get absolutely nothing for him, then regardless of how Chris Dunn and Zach LaVine turn out, it probably isn't a good trade if he doesn't re-sign here. So I don't know if you go making calls and start shopping him around, but you absolutely listen to trade offers, quite frankly, on everybody on the roster other than Karl Anthony Towns, in my opinion. I wouldn't even listen to anybody for Karl Anthony Towns. But Wiggins, yeah, probably. Jimmy Butler, if somebody has an offer for me and wants to give me some young pieces or some picks for Jimmy Butler, I would absolutely listen. I always believe that nobody is off the table. Anybody can be traded for the right pieces. Will you get the right pieces for Jimmy Butler when everybody else knows that he can leave in the offseason too? I don't know. I mean, the Toronto Raptors traded for Kawhi Leonard, even though there's a decent chance he leaves in the offseason, because they took a chance and said, hey, we can probably win the East. If we win the East or at least get to the Eastern Conference Finals, maybe we can convince him to stay. So maybe a team in the East does something like that with Jimmy Butler and gives us some pieces so that they can at least get him for 1 year. Paul George ended up staying in Oklahoma City. Everybody thought that was just a 1-year deal, and then he was going to LA afterwards. So crazier things have happened. But it's disappointing to have this conversation. The team underachieved last year. It's weird saying that, even though they made the playoffs for the first time in 14 seasons. But an 8 seed is not going to cut it. And if they're coming up on the deadline next season and they are still floating around 7, 8, 9 borderline playoff team, then you got to trade Jimmy Butler. You got to try to get something for him because the West is too good. You unfortunately have to start rebuilding. Hopefully you can build around Karl Anthony Towns. Hopefully Tibbs isn't a part of that, so you can actually get somebody that's going to use their strengths and develop what is a 2019-2020 basketball team, not Tibbs trying to play like it's still the 80s or the 90s or whatever he's trying to play still.
Yeah, I mean, I completely 100% agree with you. If you ask me what the Timberwolves need to do, if I was to march into the GM office and instantly become the GM, I think you immediately fire Tibbs. And then what I think you do is you bring in Jimmy Butler and you sit him down and say, how can we keep you? What coach, what players, what do you want? And do everything you possibly can to keep him. But unfortunately, as much as I'd like to say that's going to happen, it's not. The NBA is a players' league, and I do think this league, above any else, you need to cater to your star players. They need to be involved in what you're doing. You need to have them feel like they're a part of the team and the decisions that are being made. These players absolutely do not feel that, and I think that's a shame. I think you need to bring in Jimmy Butler, you need to sit down Karl Anthony Towns, and you need to figure out what you can do to keep this core together so we don't have to take another giant step back. But I think that's just pie in the sky. I don't think that's going to happen, and I think eventually Jimmy Butler will be traded and should be traded.
Yeah, I think that if you sat Jimmy Butler down, he might say, I want to keep Tibbs. So it almost feels like it's Jimmy and Tibbs against Wiggins and Cat, and you have to decide between the two of them. For me, it's Wiggins and Cat. No disrespect to Jimmy Butler. I appreciate what he did. I'd love to have him on this team. But Wiggins and Cat are younger. They're the future of this franchise, and I want to keep them around. I want to keep those guys happy.
For sure.
All right, guys, let us know what you guys think. Should the Wolves trade Jimmy Butler, at least try to get something for him before he possibly leaves next season in free agency? Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
See ya.